All right, let's
You
start.
want to give it maybe just 2 more minutes, that's fine too.
All right, let's give it 2 more minutes so that we don't punish the people who came early.
Absolutely. So 7:20 on the dot, we get started.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Oga Tokunbo, I believe we can start at this point. We've waited so far.
I'm set whenever we want to get started. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Presido, I can see you 2 times. So how you doing? All right. You're on mute. Okay, good. Anyways, good evening, gentlemen. I'm excited to be the guest speaker for tonight to celebrate our 40th anniversary. I think it's an honor, it's a privilege, and I'm excited to take on the mantle to commemorate what AFMS has meant to us over the past 40 years. So I've been privileged to be a part of AFMS over the past 35, and I can't imagine where I will be without the influence that AFMS has actually had on me and had on my decisions and had on my career and my path altogether. So I trust that not just myself, but I'm sure everyone on this call and all the ex-jam, we celebrate Air Force Military School for being a great institution. And 2020 has been a very interesting year in many respects, but I think one of the bright lights is the fact that we can look on Air Force Military School celebrating 40 years and I think actually give credit to the visionaries who thought of this idea and who will have thought that now, 40 years later, almost 7,000 to 8,000 that have passed through that institution, and you have this body of leaders that AFMS has actually birthed. And I just truly believe that we haven't even touched, the surface of the potential that we have. And so this is in my mind, being the speaker tonight is really to celebrate the past, but acknowledge the potential for the future. And with that context was how I would like to talk to us about the loss of growth for the next several minutes. And thanks to before I get started, I want to say a big thank you to Presido. A big thank you to Goldmay. He, I don't know how Goldmay does the things he does, but he makes things happen. It's the vision, President, that you've laid down, and I think the executive team that are executing excellently. So I salute and I doff my hat. And I actually want to give a lot of credit also to even the past executive committee. Oga Dixon, I know that, he had tireless energy to get us started. And so a huge kudos to Oga Dixon and the past executive committee, because I believe that that group laid the groundwork for what Oga K is, blazing the trail and saying, look, we're going to take this up a notch, or actually 2 notches. So, so Oga K, look, work there, there's work to do, but I know that we have the right leader, to take us through that and to really take North American XJAM to the potential it can be. When I think about AFMS, there are 3 things that come to mind. One, the discipline that we had to endure, but the punishment we had to endure, but that birthed discipline in us. I think about, all of these strokes, all of those crazy things that we had to go through, which was not fun. I can't tell you how many times I looked at, as we're descending down to get into gate, and I'll be thinking, oh my goodness, my life don't break today, or just, and it was not fun, but I think it birthed discipline in us. Number 2, one of the things that AFMS birthed in us that I can remember, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of us can share in that, is you learned how to survive. You learned how to adapt. And number 3, and I'll say probably most importantly, is it birthed leadership in us. And, several of us assumed different leadership roles. Some of us didn't, but we were close up. But I'm sure even after school, we've seen ourselves take on leadership roles in different spheres and in different circles. So AFMS was a breeding ground for leadership. And I think there are 2 critical questions that if you are a leader, and every leader should ask themselves. The first is, what am I doing to develop myself? What am I doing to grow myself? What am I doing to improve myself? And number 2 question that a leader should ask is, what am I doing to develop others? What am I doing to grow others? And so the crux of what I'll share is really about growing ourselves, growing others, thus, exposing ourselves to the loss of growth. So I have a couple of slides that I actually want to share. So I'm going to share my screen right now and have you see some of the things that we will be talking through. I'm a visual person, so I like to have things be seen as I go through and I talk, and when I give presentations and talk through things. So let me see, does everybody see that screen? Awesome, okay. All right, so those are the 2 questions every leader should ask. What am I doing to develop myself? And number 2, what am I doing to develop others? And we'll jump into that in a second. And before we do, I thought, let me just go down memory lane and just say, who am I? I told at the onset that of the 40 years in XJAM, I've been a part of that for 35. So AFMS 85, and after that, leaving AFMS, and what happened next. So let me start with the present. These are my people. Look, Benu, I know Benu was just talking about all the money he had to spend on candy for treats, trick or treat. But these are my folks. On the left is my daughter. She is 14, going to be 15 soon. On the right is my son. So she's a freshman in high school, and my son is, I like to jokingly say, he's a freshman in middle school, but he's in He's in middle school. He just got middle school. He's going to be 12 in a couple of weeks. And right in the middle there is me and my side chick. Me and my girlfriend. Me and my wife.
Falayi.
Yes,
Falayi.
that's right. That's right. So moving on to the beginning. Look at me way back in the day. Guys, can you believe this? So let me tell you the story here. So I look, thank God for technology. So I told I called my pops in Nigeria. I said, Dad, can you look into any archives and see if you'll find any old EFMS pictures? So he came up with this too. So on your right, I was in Form 1. I was actually, this was the parade after we just got in, after we just got admitted. And then there is Dr. Flo, you know, to my right. I see Ogake, they laugh, you know. See, it's amazing to see what 35 years ago looks like. But that's me. And then over there, you can see that I've begun to get my swag, you know. From 2, I now had baggers to chase after. All the wahala that they had put on my head, I have people now I can start knocking their heads and giving them punishment. But you know, I was actually happy to see this. But this was way back then, and this is evidence. So look, if people don't have evidence, we have to question them. At some point, you have to show evidence that you went through this thing. So me, I have my evidence. So, but those were fun times. After that, went on to Great Ife. How many people know that there are only 2 universities in Nigeria? There's Great Ife, and then there's what? All the others. But let me give you a rallying cry, a rallying song. A luta continua. A luta continua.
Asaka.
There we go, there we go. So after finishing,
Wrong number.
we went to the greatest of the greatest of the greatest of the greatest of the greatest. Great Ife.
Great. We have to answer.
Yes, so great. Go, May, I see you. You are scratching on that screen. But
you mean Obafemi Awolowo University?
yes, I don't know who gave that long name. Look, let's keep it to Great Ife. That's the one we like. Great Ife.
Great.
We know that it is formally called OAU, but it's the greatest of the greatest. But you know, those were fun times, and Ogake too was there with me. So you know, me and Ogake, we finished. You know, Ogake left. I said, okay, make a follow and go Ife too. We go Ife. I see him for Ife, and I will not say all those things I used to do, Ogake. I'll leave that for another day.
You have not said the department where you started in before you disappointed me.
I will talk about that later, but yes, and I see you didn't forget.
Oh yeah.
But I know. So after Great Ife now, I went for youth corps. See, people, I get evidence. So this was me back in the day on the right. My youth corps was in Nasarawa State. So I did camp in Abuja, and that was one of my friends. We actually were in Ife together. He did economics too. So I finished, you know, from Ife with economics. But the thing where Ogade talk was I started out in computer engineering and I shifted midstream, which is another story. Maybe we'll get to it later on in the slides, but a little bit of evidence. And then after NYC, this is me beginning to look sharp. Okay, actually, this is not exactly my picture. That's why I cut off that face. But, you know, the sharpness begins. So work begins in Lagos. And I worked with Arthur Anderson for about 5-6 years. And then opportunity came to transition from Nigeria to Maryland. And I took the opportunity, just got married at the time, just a couple of months before we came in 2002. And so I had to hit the reset button, started over. And in starting over in 2002, I basically employed some of the laws that I'll be sharing with us and walking through some of my experience of starting from where in 2002 to now at the point where I am privileged and opportune to be the Chief Financial Officer of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. You know, I have a couple of letters to my name there, and I'm honored to, I'm privileged to be the lead financial officer for a multi-billion-dollar organization, and I'm privileged to make several hundreds of millions of dollars in decisions on a regular basis, annual budget of about 350 million revenue, and several billions of dollars of assets under management. So I thought that it would be helpful to share a couple of lessons from my journey, and understanding that something happened to the screen. Can people still see the screen? Okay. Let me go back again and make sure it's on. All right, can everybody see that? All right, cool. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about my journey, talking about just a couple lessons that hopefully can be helpful to anyone and to everyone on this chat, and you explain how some of the laws that I'll bring out towards the end of this helped me in my journey. And, you know, I'll be honest, some time ago, years ago, I probably wouldn't have been upfront about this, because I didn't say, I don't want to look like I'm trying to impress. That's the farthest thing from my mind. I know that is somewhat anti-Niger because we flex, you know. But my intention is not to impress. My impression is to impress upon us, but more so to understand that I have been opportune to be in the position I'm in, and it is not just my journey, it's now our journey. And the experiences that I've learned are not meant for me to just keep and sit on them, but it's to share. And hopefully, if it's just one person that hears something and can take it and it can help them in their journey, then I feel like I've done my job. And I feel like the privilege that I've been accorded as being used to a greater purpose than just for my personal interest. So let's start with nugget number one. Number one, skills. I have about 4 nuggets and we'll go to them shortly. But number one, skills. It is critical to become really good at something. Now, I'm not going to spend time saying how the world is evolving, how things are changing, what you should do, not do. I feel like that's a different conversation. We can have roundtables around that. All I know from my experience is if you can be great and if you can be excellent at a particular skill, this society rewards skill and expertise. And that is clearly something that has worked in my favor. And, you know, I'd looked for a couple of things just to hear from some people that we might be familiar with. This is our man, Aliko Dangote. He said, in whatever you do, strive to be the best at it. Whatever it is. Look, in this society, if you can be a repairman, be the best repairman you can be. People will look for you, people will find you. If what you do is making caps, people will look for you and find you, and there is value add to that. For me, and I'll talk about my skills in a little bit, and how I navigated through my journey. But one of the things that I'm so impressed with, and I know I'm putting him on the spot when I talk about this, but Goldman has been extremely impressive to me, and I just want to doff my hat. I want to salute him. I want to recognize him because his dexterity with all things publicity, I think is really amazing. And, you know, I'm not saying he's the best in the world at it, but this young man has a tremendous amount of talent, tremendous amount of skill. And I just know that, the best is yet to come for this young man as he continues to build those skills. But clearly, he's made a strong impression in me, and that's what skills do for you. When you have skills and when you have capabilities that are absolutely great, you will stand out. They will speak for you. Sheryl Sandberg, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Facebook, I'm sure some might know her or heard about her. She said, build your skills, not your resume. And this is so important because many times people think, man, I got to make my resume look great, this, that, and the other. And that's not saying you shouldn't work on your resume so that when people see it, it communicates to them. But I've been in positions where we're hiring for several positions and several jobs. And sometimes with a good resume, you bring people in and they completely flop. Versus people where their resume is average, not as great, but they have the capabilities and they have the skills and the know-how to get the job done and to do the work. And obviously they got the job. So what Sheryl is saying here about building your skills, not your resume, I think it's so true. But I can't emphasize it enough to basically say that when you develop skills, your skills will actually do a lot for you. For me, my skill was, so let me talk a little bit about what Ogaki had mentioned before that I should tell my story. So when I started out in Ife, I started out with computer engineering. Well, why computer engineering? When I filled out my, when I did JAMB and I was filling all the, I was filling out all the majors that I wanted to do. My first was computer science with economics. My second was computer engineering. And then I think my third, I forget what my third was, something engineering. Maybe it was mechanical or electrical. But when I did great at JAMB, so I hit the scores, and they decided to select me for computer engineering because they had a higher cutoff mark. So I went in for engineering. I was finding my way as a Jambite, but something happened, and I will not forget this ever in my life. After my first semester, my parents sat me down and said, am I enjoying what I'm doing, what I'm exposed to? And I said, oh, sure, because I felt like I was smart enough to navigate my way through it. But that question deposited something in me. So for all the parents that are on this call, this is so key. This is so critical. That question put me on a thought process where when I got back to school for second semester, and I was in Angola Hall. So those if I would remember, I was in Angola, Jambite. I was doing my stuff, doing the physics, doing the math, doing the chemistry. Somehow physics just didn't come so natural to me. I had to struggle to get ahead. I was still getting good grades, but I was struggling. And then I had this friend who, as a Jambite, we were friends, we were in classes together. Then he said something that just struck a chord. He said, the guy went for the part 4 students were doing a demo. And this young man, a part 1 student, went for the demo, came back and said, oh boy, I wasn't impressed though. I saw some things that some part 4 people did, this and that. That's something I can easily do. That comment set off something in my mind that connected with the question that my parent asked me when they asked, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And I sat back and said to myself, I said, this is somebody that's my contemporary, but clearly the kind of passion he has and the kind of affinity he has for engineering is not what I have. Because in my mind, all I was thinking about was what I needed to do to be able to pass exams. I couldn't think beyond that. So I sat back and said, what do I enjoy? And I said, I enjoy money. I enjoy things that have to do with money. I enjoy the analysis that comes around with money. And then I had done economics as one of my subjects in school, in secondary school. So that's how I told my parents I want to shift. And then we began to work on the process. Long story short, in part 2, I moved to economics, and I began to find a passion in that, and I excelled. I did great, and I haven't looked back. But getting back to the point about my skills. So economics set me on a path of finance, of accounting, of business management. And I was interested in not only passing and doing great at school, but I could see a vision for what I wanted to do. I could see a vision for a career. And that propelled me to keep sharpening and honing my skills. So getting back to the point of skills, find out what skills, either you have them or the skills that ignite your passion. Because when you can combine your passion with your skills, it allows you to drive and push further and further out. And there's this point that it's called the 10,000 hour rule by an author called Malcolm Gladwell. The rule says, to become world-class at anything, you have to put in a 10,000 hours of practice. So on your left is, if you want to break that down to, if I put in 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year, it's going to be about 5.5 years. But many of us are already working in a field where all we just need to do is just keep honing those skills. For some of us, we're working in a place, in a field or in an area where you're not optimizing your skills, but it's because there's a misalignment. And so part of the question is, how do you hone in the right skills to help you become a master and an expert in your field? Because when you do, doors and opportunities will open for you. Now, I know many of us have invested time in school and everything else to get ahead, but we're talking about growth. And in talking about growth, you have to be in the right place and with the right skills and with the passion that can ignite perfection and expertise. So moving to nugget number 2 that worked for me and that helped me. So I told you guys I'm now the CFO of this organization, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. I've been with the organization for about 16 years. It happened that when we relocated to the US, I had to go around doing different jobs. You know, you do whatever you can get your hands on. So one of the things that I did then was to do a temp. I was doing a temporary assignment. I was working for different organizations where I'd go for a week here, do a temp here, go to another company, do a temp for another week or 2 weeks. And so in the process of doing these different temporary assignments, I stumbled into the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and it was supposed to be a 2-week assignment. And long story short, this is me 16 years later, now the head of the finance function. But how did that happen? So I went there for a 2-week assignment, and the assignment I had was to help reconcile some accounts. So unbeknownst to me, they were going through a significant change in the organization. So there was a reorganization going on. There was a lot of accounting reorganization going on within the function. But all I knew was, come in for 2 weeks, help us reconcile some accounts, and you'll be done. My people, 2 weeks became 3 weeks. 3 weeks became 4 weeks. 4 weeks became 5 weeks. 5 weeks became 6 weeks. 6, 7, 7 to 8. 8th week, I had the head of HR come around to my little cubicle. I was in one little corner where they put me. So I said, give us your resume. I said, okay, sure. Gave her my resume. So I was waiting for an opportunity to now be told, okay, we have this blah, 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 schedule an interview, do an interview. People, I cannot tell you that I was shocked that the next thing I knew was I had an offer letter in front of me. So I got on this temporary assignment, didn't do an interview, and got an offer letter. But what happened? 2 things. I talked about skill in nugget number 1. Number 2 was attitude. attitude makes a world of difference. Now, let's talk about what attitude is, and then I'll finish that story. So attitude is, let me define this for us briefly, according to dictionary.com. Attitude is a disposition, a feeling, a position with regard to a person or a thing, and especially of the mind, a tendency or an orientation. But I like this simpler definition. It says that your attitude is a settled way of thinking or feeling about something or someone that reflects in your behavior. And so when I went into that place, there were two things that I went in. I said, look, I'm going to do the best that I can. And number two, I'm going to exceed expectations in terms of finishing the work they gave me before the deadlines at my own cost. So even though I was hourly and I was supposed to be on an 8-hour regimen, I would make sure that I worked extensively to get the work done and get the job done and point out issues or stuff that I had. And so it became clear, but all these things were unknown to me was afterwards that people started telling me, right? So behind the scenes, they began to have conversations like, oh, this guy is good though, okay. Let's give him, I know we asked him to do X, Y, Z, but maybe we can add more. I'll give him something different. And because I had an attitude and a disposition where I was open, I was open to more work and I was willing to spend the time it took because people, in my mind, I'm coming from ground zero. So whatever it was going to take, I was willing to give it. And so my attitude was, if you give me a lemon, I will make lemonade. And I love this quote by Zig Ziglar. It says, your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. And then number two, this other quote here by The Power of Positivity says, what's your attitude? It's the first thing people notice about you. And so when I got that feedback after the fact, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that's why, this happened. That's why they kept giving me different assignments. That's why they kept asking me, so what did you think when you looked at this, reconciliation? What's odd to you? Because I'd come back with some analysis around it. I was like, oh, so that's why, when they came and asked for my resume, and then they came and said they were offering me a job without an interview. Those were the things that were not very obvious to me, but those were laws that was putting into action that actually spoke for me. Those actions spoke for me. So check this out. The job that I was offered, I couldn't start that job immediately because for those who are familiar with how temp agencies work, if a temp agency provides a staff to an organization, and if the company likes that staff, the company has to pay the temp agency 25 to 30% as a fee for bringing in a person that they now want to convert into full-time. And most companies don't want to pay that kind of a fee. So in lieu of paying the fee, you come up with an arrangement where you continue to work with the temp agency, but with the company for about 3 months. So even though I was given the offer, I had to keep working as a temp for a couple more months. Before my assignment was over, another job opened up. I was asked to actually apply for that job, and I got that job. So I got that job, which was more money. And we were able to also work out an arrangement that if I met the expectations of that job, that after 12 months, I will get a 20% raise in my income. And so things just began to kind of pile up and began to build up. But all I'm trying to say and honing is this. I had this skill that I brought into the organization that I kept working on. I kept honing. I brought the accounting skill. I brought the finance skill. I had finished actually my ICANN in Nigeria before I came. So I had that as a backdrop. But as soon as I landed here, I began to take the studies to become a CPA. And I was able to do that within about 18 months, 18 to 24 months, going to school, working, and just hustling to get that done. So I was building my skills, and I was also equipped with the right attitude. Now, I'll tell you one of the things that became a lot more obvious when I now began to be in a position where I was now, one, a manager, a supervisor, and then now in a leadership role. You can smell attitude from afar. Attitude are the non-verbal cues that make a world of difference. And I can tell you this for a fact, that I have staff that work for me right now. And I know the people where if I say, I have this assignment and I have this task, it's going to be, okay, when do you want it? How do you want it? How do you want me to reprioritize the different tasks that I have? And I also have certain people who will say, I'm too busy right now. TK, this person gave me work to do. And I'm thinking, whoever gave you work to do works for me. So you should be the one telling them, okay, how do I reprioritize? And you will also have people who will tell you that, look, this thing can't work. And as a leader, the last thing you want to hear is people coming up with the vibes of why a goal cannot be reached, why a task cannot be done, why work cannot be executed. And I can tell you for a fact. So I'll give you one quick example. So one of my direct reports, a controller that works for me last year, was it last year or maybe actually 2 years ago? So this is 2020, was 2018. So she got another job, got an offer that was going to offer her about $40,000 to $50,000 more than what she was making. I told her, wait for me. I'm going to HR, I'm going to the CEO, and I'm going to tell them, guys, we have to match this offer because I cannot afford to lose the staff. Ladies and gentlemen, oh, sorry, no ladies here, now only gentlemen. Oh, there's some ladies? Oh, great. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that within 24 hours, this person got a salary raise of $50,000 because of the attitude. She is one of my positive attitude people where whatever we need to do, however we need to get it done, I put my neck on the line and said, guys, I'm not losing this staff for. Except this person says, okay, I don't want to work here anymore. But if it's because of a competing offer, we have to match it because the productivity gains far exceeds the cost of having to go back into the market. So let me shift from that. But kind of long story short is this, people, attitude makes a world of difference. And if you have the right attitude, you have the right dispensation. Now, I'm not saying becoming a yes, sir, yes, my kind of person or having an attitude where it's everything goes, but it's the productivity. And I think it's the positivity of saying, we share the goals, we share the vision, and we are about can do versus can't do. So moving to the next nugget number 3, communication and public speaking. It took me a little bit of time to come to terms with this. And I'm going to say a couple of things that might be a little sensitive or, but it's important for us to come to terms with it. And the reason is because, let me first define communication, right? And then we'll get into it. First, we'll talk about Warren Buffett, but communication is simply the act of transferring information from one person, place, or group to another. When you communicate, the other person on the other side has to be on the same wavelength and have the same frequency. And I found out that it is so important that as I was growing and as I was developing, and sure, I had the right skills, I had the right attitude, but it was also important for me to now be able to express fully all of my thoughts, all of my thinking, all of the issues, and all of the facts in a very clear and concise way that the other person can understand and can flow at the same wavelength. So let's go to Warren Buffett. People know Warren Buffett, but people know him for being one of the richest men in the world, right? He's the investment guru. He's the father or one of the fathers of value investing for those who are in the world of finance. And here he is basically pontificating and saying, if you cannot communicate, it's like winking at a girl in the dark, nothing happens. Because if you're in the dark, nobody they see that wink now. You just a wink, nothing. So in other words, I think it's funny, but the point being that if you're doing your part to try to get a message across, but in this case, if you're in the dark, the person on the other side, the girl can't see you winking now, so they don't know that you're interested. So if you can't convey your ideas effectively, it will be a challenge. One of the things that I had to come to terms with is that, and I didn't realize this until I began to have people politely ask me to come again. How many people don't the office when they say, "Oh boy, come again. I didn't hear what you said." And one of the things I realized is, we all know we have an accent now, because I was not born here. I have an accent, and I don't have the American accent, but how can I slow it down? Slow it down to a point where you don't have to keep coming again and again and again and again. Now, there are some people that are lazy, right? Some people are lazy, and if you don't talk like them, then they don't hear you. But in some other instances, you do have people who struggle more to hear you depending on the nature of your accent. And so for me, I had to slow down. I had to slow it down because I didn't want to be in meetings where people kept saying, "Come again," or "I didn't hear you," or people will not tell you this. But when it comes to meetings with the CEO, when it comes to meetings with the people in places of influence, where you came up with the idea, but now they will take that idea and they're going to present it in front of the big boss. And then it will look like they're very smart. Meanwhile, it's not because they didn't want to take you along. It's because they're trying to, in some instances, some other instances, indeed, yes, that may be the case or whatever it is. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, where we have a level playing field and you have 2 minutes, because if you're going to go to a CEO, you don't have all the time in the world. You don't have all the time in the world to keep going, "Come again." "Oh, say it again. What do you mean?" You have to get your point across in a succinct way. You have to get your point across in a concise way, and you have to make effective use of your time. And so you have to be able to be in a place where you can get your points across, but you also understood the art of conciseness. Say in Nigeria, we like to talk, but our liking to talk many times can make us be verbose. What I mean is, sometimes we use, and I'm guilty of this because I had to reprogram. When we were doing school, our universities, when you come up with all these big, big words and big, big letters, it was like you were thought to be very erudite. Now you sabi. But over here, the simplicity of your language is actually on a premium. So you have to be able to communicate on a simplistic level, and you have to be able to articulate on a very simple level so that people can get the point in the least amount of time. That was something I had to spend time on. And I'll be honest to say, it continues to be a work in progress. Now, all these nuggets that I'm sharing with us are not things that I feel like I'm an expert, I'm done, I can go to sleep. Because I feel like the moment you take, the moment you relax and the moment you take your feet off the pedal, something is going to come and just fly over you. So I keep working, I keep sharpening those skills, I keep sharpening those tools. I take lessons. I go to courses. One of my mentors now is John Maxwell. I don't know if people know John Maxwell, but he's a is a leadership expert, is a communication expert. I'm taking public speaking courses because not only do I need to be able to communicate one-on-one and in short meetings, but I also now need to be able to communicate with larger audiences. So as the chief financial officer of my organization, I need to make presentations to the board. So I need to make presentations to the CEO. I make presentations to the executive leadership. I lead strategic meetings. So I engage on that front. I make those meetings, make those presentations, articulate the points and the issues we have to resolve. But then I also have meetings with the board of directors of my board. And these are big people. Some of them are billionaires. Some of them are hedge fund managers. Some of them are actually heads of, governmental agencies. Some of them are CEOs of major corporations. And so the art of public speaking now was important. Now, remember I talked about skills. I had my accounting skills, but I was evolving to a point where my accounting skills are just not enough. I have other skills that I need to acquire to supplement, what I was doing. And so communication is key. I've learned that, I'm learning it, and I can't emphasize how critical enough it is. And again, just to borrow from the words of the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, it says, if you want to get ahead, focus on your communication skills. He said, honing your communication skills could increase your net worth by 50%. I can tell you for a fact that it has increased my net worth by more than 50% because I've had opportunities that have actually doubled my income at different points in time along the way. And then he says this, you can have all the brain power in the world, but you've got to be able to transmit it. And that goes back to that definition of communication, that it's transmission between two people. So you can know everything in your mind, but if the other person doesn't get the message, you haven't communicated. All you've done is you've talked. And it's absolutely critical and important to be able to do that. I'll finish with this quote on this last nugget. This is Jan Koum, co-founder and CEO of WhatsApp. Everybody appreciates WhatsApp, but I don't know if everybody knows this young man, but he's probably in his 30s, I think, maybe he's now in his early 40s. And everybody, a couple of years ago when Facebook bought WhatsApp for, I think it was about 4 billion or something. So he is a billionaire in his own right. And he says this, he says communication is at the very core of our society. That's what makes us human. And it is in our relationship, in our workplace, in our relationship, in our businesses, at our jobs, communication is a critical skill and a critical art to build up and acquire. Nugget number 4, leadership. So if you look at that clip at the very top, leadership entails a lot. There used to be, when I was in business school doing my MBA, back then, we used to have all this discourse about management versus leadership. And it took me a while to really internalize the distinction between the two. But managers are all about getting the job done. But leaders are about people and the productivity that comes through people. Managers will use you and may not necessarily care about you. All they care about is, I need my results, I need my numbers, get the job done. A manager can backstab you, and a manager sometimes are people that you have to watch your back. Like, you gotta be really careful because you know them, they're all about what's in it for them. And I'm not saying all managers are that way, but I'm saying typically, if you find people like that that are supervisors, they're only all about managing. It's all about how do I get the job done at all costs? And I don't care whatever the process or the path is. Now, leaders, to be a leader and leadership is all about people because there's a recognition that you want to get the job done and you can't do it by yourself because if you think solo, then your impact is going to be very minimal. So at some point, it's got to move beyond just your skills, your technical skills, and it's got to evolve now into leadership. And with leaders, a lot of things come into play. But I summarize leadership as it's got to involve people, and it's got to be about people, and it's about how to get people to be able to do things because they want to, and how to be as effective and as productive as you can be. So I said a couple of things there about leaders, right? You know, systems, you know, that they're the chief comfort officer. Sometimes, you know, they exercise power. They have followers to provide direction, but they encourage, you know, they're effective. They have a heart. They have passion. They have all these different things that goes along, responsibility that goes along with being a leader. And my last nugget for us is I had to embrace leadership because I could only do so much. At some point, it will dawn on you, except you're a solo person. If you're solo, God bless you, and maybe that's your best, that's what you like to do. And then maybe this nugget might not necessarily be for you. But if you're not a solo person, you're not just a me, myself, and I can just walk what I want to do by myself, you're going to have to relate with people. You're going to have to walk with people. You're going to have to walk through people. And leadership now comes into play when you have to get things done with people and through people. And, you know, we have different types of leaders, right? And you have different levels to leadership. And we'll talk about that in a little minute. But to be effective and to be able to attain to multiple levels and different levels, you have to grow your leadership. But I say here, embrace it because it is not an easy task. Being a leader and being an effective leader doesn't necessarily come easy because you can't fake it. Now, we call people leaders, but they truly don't deserve to be called leaders. We call them leaders by virtue of their position, but not by virtue of the fact that they truly have earned it. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 levels of leadership by John Maxwell, who again, I've told you guys, one of my mentors. So I love to tell you a little bit about him. It says the 5 levels of leadership. And the first one is the lowest. It says over here is you have power or you have position. So people follow you because they have to. But when you start climbing up, it's now much more different. Level 2 is people follow you because they want to. You can't make people do certain things as a leader if they don't want to. How many of us know how frustrating it can be when some people tell you, bro, or boss, or, you know, don't say bro, but I'm just saying bro. I say, man, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Or, you know, it's like, whatever you want to say, I'm just, you know, I'm not just going to get to it. I'll get to it when I get the time to get to it. And of course, you can't fire everybody all the time when they do that. So you have to live with some of those things. But if you operate at that level, that because I'm now a manager or because I'm now a supervisor, you know, I instruct and people have to take all the orders I give them. And those are the rights you have. And that's the level of responsibility that you can command from your team players. You're on level 1. Level 2 is now people now say, okay, I want to follow you. All right, I take you as my leader. I know you have the position. I know you have the title, but I'm going to follow you. Level 3, now people start seeing results. And because of the results that you've produced with them and that you've produced also, they now start following you more. Level 4 is now you're all about them. Now, this is a critical level. You're just not about yourself. This is not just a me, myself, and I. This is about what's in it for you, and I want what's best for you. I told you guys the story about how I went to fight for one of my staff to get this counter offer that made her stay. I did something that she didn't think I would do, because I told her, you know what, give me a couple hours. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to fight to make sure you don't go anywhere, because I want you here and I want you with my team and I want you on this team. And, you know, and I'm not saying that to impress us, but to impress upon us that I went out of my way. I put my neck on the line. I know that she's productive, right? No doubt about it. But I did something for her that's affected her and her family. So now there's something that she has in her mark that TK did this for me. I will go to lengths for him. And then level 5. This is where people call your name and people know you. I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping I can get there. But when I do an honest assessment, I feel like I'm, depending on different situations you're in, you have to do an assessment of yourself. Am I a level 1 or am I a level 2? Am I a level 3 or am I a level 4? In what scenarios do I actually operate, and how can I now evolve and grow on these different levels? So I want to tell you something that one of our very own said, Dr. Flo Falayi, one of our wonderful and powerful leaders, who is the founder of the Hybrid Leadership Institute, and I'm honored to call him my brother, my very own. We passed through the same womb. He said, great leaders compete with their team, while weak leaders compete with the team. I want to take you to the next slide, and then I'll join the two together. How many people know Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, and now his Ant Group? Beam shared this on the WhatsApp group yesterday. His Ant Group just put out an IPO, and the IPO is oversubscribed by, I think, 800 times over what they were looking for. This guy, I'm really fascinated by him. Again, I'm not being politically correct here. He's from China. I don't care. But this is someone who if you want to find an inspirational entrepreneur, I will suggest study and read up on Jack Ma. I don't know too much about him yet, but I'll tell you a little bit of what I know. He applied for Harvard 10 times, didn't get in. He applied to universities in his country, in China. Only one university accepted him. It was a teaching university, to be a teacher. This man that is now one of the top 10, I think by the time this IPO rolls up, this man will probably be one of the top 10. He's currently in the top 20 richest in the world. He'll probably be in the top 10 and inching up. He was a teacher, taught for 6 years as a teacher, decided to go out and become an entrepreneur and just try his hands on this thing called the internet. Didn't have a background in tech. All he was thinking about is maybe there can be a way we can help some people. And long story short, his companies is now one of the major B2B companies in China, and probably, and he continues to penetrate and provide services to the Chinese people in such a way that his companies they're doing some incredible things to bring technology and to bring services to the rural areas of China. But anyways, I want to emphasize the 2 points he made. He says, 1, a good boss is better than a good company. In other words, you can be working in Apple and you don't care about Apple as a company, but you care more about the boss you work for. And he says a leader should never compare his technical skills with his employees. Now, remember what I said earlier with what Dr. Flo said, great leaders complete their team. They don't compete with their team, because you have to be careful that you don't see people in your team as threats. If you're in a situation where people in your team are threats to you, you need to step back and really reevaluate, why are they a threat? Because being a leader is more than just technical skills. One of my greatest challenges as I was climbing up the ladder to become the CFO, and I was walking through different, so started out as a staff, the lowest levels before becoming middle management, senior management, and now executive leadership, was okay, let me be honest. I was like, man, if I'm not doing a lot of my accounting and finance every day, like the day to day, 8 hours to 10 hours I'm putting in, do I begin to get rusty on those skills? And then I began to realize that for me to be effective, I've got to delegate some of those jobs and functions and roll over to other people. And then the question then becomes that I, as an executive leader, what is my job? What is my role? And how do I continue to at least be a little sharp, not as sharp as I was, but continue to stay sharp on my accounting and finance skills, attend conferences, sharpen up on that, but begin to expand the breadth of my skills so that I don't feel threatened by my staff and I can truly, truly lead them. I don't feel threatened by somebody and say, oh man, this person might take my job tomorrow. If you are truly in that state and in that place, this is what Dr. Flo is talking about. This is when you weaken your team and you don't have the influence that you should truly have. And so we can talk about that extensively, probably not today, but how do you now begin to build on and grow the executive leadership, middle management skills that allow you to thrive as a leader and to allow you to now be able to have the kind of jobs and opportunities and growth? Because I'm telling you, I didn't realize this until I began to step into a senior management role. Senior management, executive leadership can actually be a career in and of itself. And so one of the things that, I had to make a transition from is, I understand the technicalities, I have my technical skills, but I've got to evolve those skills. Otherwise, I won't elevate to the top. All right, so leadership. I love this chart here because it gives you a sense of together we accomplish more. All right. I've heard people say that the acronym TEAM actually stands for Together Everybody Accomplishes More. And this is, if you play football or you're aware of football or you follow sports, you understand that it's the ultimate teamwork and that without a team, you can't truly be effective. And so we begin to wrap up and wind down. I started off with 2 questions at the onset. I said, every leader, and I believe that everybody on this call, you are a leader in your own right. I said, every leader should ask themselves, 1, what am I doing to develop myself? How am I growing? And number 2, what am I doing to develop others? And question number 1, in many ways can be the question around how do I succeed and how do I become a success and how do I continue to become successful? But question number 2 truly begins to be the point where it's about significance, because now this is no longer about you, this is about others. And I truly believe that every leader, every true leader, not fake leaders, not positional leaders, every true leader, you need to have this mindset be your calling card and your mantra every single time. How am I getting better? How am I helping others to get better? How am I getting better? How am I helping others to get better? Because if it's only about you, well, if you're satisfied with just me, myself, and I, then I want to say, well, God bless you. But I truly believe that the full potential of us as leaders, of we as humans, it can't just be all about ourselves. It's got to be about more than me. And so significance and success go hand in glove. So I really want to say that it's about being successfully significant, that as I grow myself, as I improve myself, as I develop myself, as I attain my goals, financial goals, relational goals, emotional goals, career goals, that I'm also alongside with that saying, how am I developing others and how am I growing? So I'm going to wrap this up with 3 laws that I've actually illustrated all the way through the story of my journey. Is that for you to develop yourself, for you to develop others, for you to grow yourself, for you to grow others, that number 1, you have to be intentional, because growth doesn't just happen. Developing yourself, developing others doesn't just happen by accident. All right? Manna is not just going to fall from heaven and boom, you've now done all these things. That we have experienced life enough to understand that if you don't put in the effort and the sweat equity and the intentionality that it requires, that time will pass us by. So I want to just say that let's be intentional. And I'm barely scratching the surface on this law, but I'll move on to the next one. Number 2, the law of awareness. You've got to be able to come to terms with 3 things when it comes to being aware, and this law of awareness. Number 1, so this law says, I forgot to say this, says you must know yourself to grow yourself. But 3 things that is critical about this law is that you must know your passion. What are you passionate about? Jeff Bezos said, which is very interesting. We all know Jeff, or we all know Amazon. We all know Jeff Bezos. He said, having a passion is a gift. This is coming from Jeff. I was shocked when I heard it. He said, having a passion is a gift. And he said, we all have passions. That actually, you don't get to choose those passions. Those passions have actually chosen you. It says, but here's the key. It says, but you have to be alert to those passions, because many times they don't flash a green light, they don't flash a red, it's amber. So it's soft. It's soft. It says you have to be looking for those passions. It says because when you find passion, when you find what you're passionate about, that your passion can give you direction and your passion can give you purpose. Because you can have a job, you can have a career, but you can have a calling. That when you find your passion with your purpose, it gives you a calling in life. And then when you have the combination of those 2 things, something is about to happen. But this law of awareness is essentially saying you must come to terms with what your passion is. What gets you excited? What gets you going? What is that thing that you do that it's like time passes by and it's so easy? Or what are those things that you do that they come so easy for you, but for others, it's a big struggle? That begins to give you a sense of the things you're passionate about. Or what are those things that just get you really upset and mad? What are those things that just turn your stomach upside down? That once you can begin to find those things, they're beginning to give a clue to what you're passionate about. Because the thing about passion in this, passion has longevity. If you are doing something you're not passionate about, I can tell you that at some point in time, they'll begin to wear off you. Many times, and I'm not talking about this, in the sense of not having a work-life balance. But if you work a job where you go to the job, you show up, and when you're done, it's over, and you never do anything else, and you move on to other things, and check out where your passion is, because that can be an indication of maybe that's not really your passion. Or if you're investing time in some kind of a vocation that doesn't ignite something in you, then just know that over time you have to shift. Otherwise, you will let your passion go unattended. And the critical thing about passion is that your passion is connected to your potential. To truly realize your potential, you've got to have passion. Because one of the things that passion does is passion gives you energy. Passion gives you this intestinal fortitude. Passion gives you this, or it helps to give you, this stick-to-itiveness. Like, I'm not going to let go. I'm going to keep climbing. Because for other people that are not passionate, that's where they stop. But for you, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And when you keep going, that's when you uncover the gems. And so the law of awareness is you must know yourself to grow yourself. Your passion, your purpose. And the last thing I will say about the law of awareness is your opportunities. Opportunities, I love this quote. It says, opportunities come a dime a dozen, but if you don't grab them, somebody else will. So seize the moment. We're living in interesting times because of the pandemic that ransacked the whole globe in different dimensions. Whereas COVID has created a disruption that has created unemployment, has created losses, and terrible things that have happened, but it's also created opportunities. Some people have become wealthier by the millions and by the billions, not because they were manipulating anything, but because COVID and disruption has now created this remote work, remote lifestyle, and so many other things that has now created opportunities. So awareness, law of awareness is saying, recognize or be sensitive to the opportunities. And my people, my Yoruba people, we say, the thing where they find for Shokoto, they inside Shokoto. In other words, what you're reaching for and thinking it's far and far and far away, and it's further away from you, that it's within your vicinity. I believe that opportunities are around you. I'm telling you, it's up to you to be aware and to recognize, take advantage, and maximize them. And last law that we've kind of talked about is, in different illustrations, is that is the law of trade-offs. It says you have to give up to grow up. I call this something has to give. This is the law of something has to give. If it's worth it to chase after whatever that growth goal is for you, or growth objective is, personal, individual, or even about others, it's going to cost you something. We are too old now to think that good things will just come hanging on a fruit. Now, I'm not saying that you may necessarily have to put in, I can't tell you exactly what that exchange will be like, but all I can tell you is that it's going to take something for you to become an expert. It's going to take something for you to become the best leader you can be. It's going to take something for you to become the entrepreneur that you want to be. And so, get comfortable with the fact that something has to give. I always say that your time is your life. Whatever you give your time to, you're giving your life to. So the question is, what's going to influence, what's going to drive your reprioritization of what you focus time on and what you give your life to? Spend the time and take the time and make the decision to spend the time on the things that are significant and that matter. And the things that don't matter, let them go. But something has to give. Folks, I think this is my last or one or two slides, just about making the transition to intentional growth. I've kind of talked about it, saying you got to ask yourself the big questions. If you're not where you desire to be, then the question is, how do I begin on a journey to get to where I want to be? And we're living longer now. Back in the day, look at me now with all this time, I done get close to 50. And I'm like, 50 is the new 30, I'm in my later 40s now, mid to later 40s. 50 is the new 30, because we're living longer. My father retired from work when he was in his mid 50s. And well, thank God he's still alive now. But in my mind, I'm like, retire at 55, forget it. I feel like I'm still a young man that can just go through a brick wall. So for a lot of us, I still have 30 years, 40 years ahead of me. So the question is, if I have those 40 years, some of us on this call, maybe we have 50 or even 60. I say, man, that means life is just starting. When you're 30, when you're 40, that's when you're now really getting all your senses around you. You've gone through it. I'm not saying 20 and 30 doesn't mean, but it's like you've now grown enough to now know certain things, or you've grown enough to know yourself better. You've grown enough, and so asking yourself the big questions: where do I want to be when I'm 60 and 70? And what do I want to be doing? If something happens, God forbid, and I pass tomorrow, who will miss me? What will I be known for? One of the things that actually shocked me into action more, and really, I approached Ogake, our president. I said, I'd be happy to do something for the X-Jam, because it just dawned on me that I have all this journey. I don't feel like I've arrived by any means, but I'm ahead of certain things, and I have journeys that I have experiences that I can share. And I said, if in 12 months, if God say, Tokunbo, I'm going to make a demand on your life in 12 months, what will I do in 12 months? And I said, all of the things that I've been opportune and I've been blessed with, I'll just keep it to myself. No way. So I said, okay, I have to share the news. I have to put it out there. And if it's just one person that this helps, I'm good. But I began to ask myself the big questions like, what am I doing, or how can I do more for others? All right, I'm doing something, but how can I do more? And how can I put more out there? So ask yourself the big questions to help. Do it now. And don't let fear, don't let anything hold us back. We've heard this before, this acronym, fear. Fear is, false expectations appearing real. Fear is nothing, fear is just nothing. Do it anyways, We always say that, people used to say before that faith is the absence of fear. No, faith just means you'll take action. So some of us, we just need to take action, and just, even if we're scared, even if we're going to make mistakes, make it and move on. Somebody once said that when you fail, that failing is first attempt in discovering and in learning. So if you fail sometimes, then it means, okay, I learn one way to not do something, but I'll keep going because I have a passion and I have a purpose, and I want to attain these objectives. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. Zig Ziglar. And so, my people, in the words of our AFMS motto that says, strive to excel, I want to encourage us. See these people running. Look at that young man near Usain Bolt, giving Usain Bolt all he could handle. But I think this is the perfect depiction of someone that's striving, that's devoting serious effort and energy. In the words of our AFMS motto again, I want to encourage us, I want to charge us, I want to just hopefully put in some words to say, let's strive to excel, to be exceptionally good, proficient in whatever our purpose and our calling is. And I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. And it's been more of my pleasure. I hope it's been your pleasure over this past 60 minutes. Thank you very much. Ogake, back to you, sir.
Well done, well done. So we're going to open the lines now. Actually, so if you want to ask a question, let's take some questions, correct, TK? we're going to take a couple of questions. I have a whole bunch, so if you waste time, I will just be asking the question like saying that only me day here. So if you have a question, raise your digital hand first. Okay, that's easier for me to see. But otherwise, raise your show me your hand on the camera, and then I can call on to you. But if you raise your digital hand, that's the easiest. Then I can call in that order. And then when it's your turn to speak, you can unmute yourself. Ask your question and then mute yourself just so that we'll have very good sound. All right. So I see, let me just tell you the hands I can see. Digitally, I see Adeshoboejo's hand up. Who else? No. Okay, let me look through the camera. Well, there is, you have to put on your camera if you want to ask a question and show me through. All right. So Shoboejo, you have the floor.
Good evening, sir. Sunday Shoboejo is my name, 92/1622. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, sir.
Welcome, my brother.
So in terms of the career, you mentioned something about when you get to a certain stage within your career and trying to find the balance between being technical, that you could do the job, as well as being a leader that people can follow. So as you have got to that stage in your career now, how do you manage that medium where you can actually be a leader as well as know that technically you're not getting rusty and technically you are not at that stage where people now kind of perceive you as just administrative, if you like? For me, I ask that question because I find that I've got to a stage in my career where I am leading a significant size, and I've had the opportunity now, and I'm not doing as much technically, but it concerns me, the image and the perception that I may not be what I think I am technically, because, and in reality, I feel quite rusty as well. So I'll off my mic, but thank you again for the presentation, sir.
No, you're welcome, Ade. I think that is a fantastic question. As a matter of fact, when I was going through that part of the presentation, I had to hold myself back because I felt if I went too deep, I wouldn't get off of it. That took me about maybe about 3 years, to be honest with you, to actually overcome that thought. But what I began to realize was that I wasn't competent enough as a leader, right? So I needed to shift gears to become a better leader. And that was going to take some time and investment on my part. I was going to have to spend time. I was going to have to take some courses. I was going to have to learn more, not just now. So, okay, I'm the chief financial officer, right? My company is in the business of, it's nonprofit, but we're really in the business of conservation. So we're almost like a conservation investment bank. So I needed to now understand the industry that we're in better. So I need to spend time studying the industry. I need to spend time understanding the different business units and the different functions within those different business units. So what I discovered was that if I was going to be a more effective leader, I needed to invest time in the things of value that I don't have enough hours in the day to keep on with my technical, it wasn't really my responsibility anymore, but it was just more of doing so if you're an IT, let's say what you were coding, you can't spend 8-10 hours coding anymore, because where will you spend time to do the other things that you need to do? So for me, I couldn't spend 8-10 hours doing the core accounting, creating journal entries, figuring out how to book records and expenses and things of that nature, because I needed to understand the business. And now what I now found out, why it took me some time in 3 years, was because, at least about 3 years, was I now began to see the payoff that if I become a better leader, I understand how to work with people. I understand how to interact with my various business leaders. I understand the business we're in, that it allowed me to be more effective. But then the last thing I also did was I was still taking a couple courses. So in accounting profession, we have what we call continuing professional education. So you're kind of mandated to do that to be able to maintain your CPA license. But I did a lot more than I was required to do because I said, okay, I needed to figure a way I still needed to be current, even if I wasn't doing all the technical work. But I also have to spend a lot of time developing myself to become a better leader. That now makes me invaluable because I'm a better leader, the effectiveness resulted in better productivity. And I can tell you one thing, from a bottom line standpoint, if you can deliver more, companies will keep you. So that was how I was able to get through the conundrum of, at some point, you got to transition, otherwise you will not be as effective of a leader as I can be. So does that help a little bit?
Yes, it does help a little bit, and well, significantly actually. I'm in healthcare, and
Okay.
And I work in healthcare, and I have a significant team around me, and I don't have to do the work in terms of seeing patients and doing the cardiac imaging scans that my team do. But at the same time, I have to carry out I need to look at my CPDs as well. We have these things that we have to continue to remain constant and current with.
Right.
But it's just for me, the time to time that I have that feeling that I don't want to not be able to do the job, because there are moments that they want to see that I am doing the job, not because it's part of my role, but just so that they know that their leader that they seem to be following can do the job.
Right. And I think, maybe that's a little bit of, it's not a hard and fast rule, right? The mix might differ for different industries or different professions, because, and I'll tell you some of the other things that I also did too. There are times that I shadow my team members and I just say, okay, everybody come together, or I want to look at maybe the accounts payable function, or I look at the receivables function, and I spend a day. Let's deep dive. So part of what that does for me is I refresh. In an hour, I spend a day, we do like a brainstorming session, I refresh, and in one full day, in eight hours, I've gotten all my systems fresh. So if I ever get any conversation around receivables, I can speak to it. So same thing with all the different tools. So it's almost like you sit back and say, how can I also still stay abreast without necessarily being always hands-on, right? But I also know I have to pay attention to the things that create value, because if I'm just a figurehead, then I become dispensable. So you want to balance that. I don't want to just be a figurehead. I'm adding value, but I'm staying abreast in a very effective way where I'm still relevant and I can still speak the language. And people just don't think, we can bamboozle you, because it's happened to me at some point in time where some team members would bring something to me and I ask a question that makes them actually do a double take, because they probably weren't expecting that I knew some of it. But when I did, then it created more accountability. So I'll say just play by ear. Works for different industries slightly differently, but it's a work in progress.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
All right. Please lower your digital hand today. And then who else has a question? I just tell you what I see a question from Oga Kenneth. He typed it in here. So the question is from Dr. Kenneth Iyamo, 81/182. He says, how are you maintaining a good balance between work and family life?
Oga, you don't ask serious question now. I wouldn't say it's an easy walk, right? But what a couple of things that I've done. One, and this is where leadership helps a lot, Because when you grow to be an effective leader, then you actually have capable people who work with you, who want to work for you, and who will go the extra mile because you've invested in them. So you begin to reap some of the results of leverage. I kind of want to call it leverage. And I don't mean that in a negative way of you're using people, but I just mean that as a leader, part of your effectiveness is that you got to be able to walk through people. So I think that was one of my motivations to become a better leader. I said, okay, how can I get these people that work for me directly and indirectly to want to be able to go the extra mile and to want to be able to do the best that they can do? Because if they do the best they can do, it frees me up a little bit more because I know that it's less of an issue and it's less of a headache. So that's one. Effective leadership and growth in my leadership continues to help on that front. Number two, when you do what you love, it makes the sacrifices a little bit better when you do something you enjoy. And I put it this way. When you do what you enjoy, you can always squeeze in every little bit here or there to patch things up, to give you the extra time needed. So my kids, for those that were a little bit early on, I have teenagers and preteens, so 14 and 12. They're active in sports. In fact, today, since 9 o'clock where I don't wake up, now, so carry go volleyball, carry go soccer, this, that. Now, I just got back home, just barely had an hour before this call. Tomorrow now, 7 o'clock, we carry go again, volleyball. So part of what I do is I take some of my work along with me so that if there are opportunities, I do them during those time frames. So I think it's not perfect. It's a balancing act. And we're walking ourselves through it. But the last thing I'll say is I try to be present. What I find sometimes is that the challenge with time is that if you can make the best of the time that you have, then it can mean something. So if it's 1 hour or 2 hours that I have to spend with the kids, then I want to try and be present as much as possible. And I'll still say I'm still working on that one because many times I'm there and it's like my mind is over there. And then Madame will say, now you, TK, now you would have talked to, So I'll say the three things are: one, just trying to be present, be in the moment, and try to make every time count so that it's not just the quantity of time, but it's the quality of time. Number two is if you do what you love, it makes it easier for you to create time and look for a little bit of time to supplement than the regular. And the last one I said was just effective leadership, because then you can walk through people better.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? Let me see if there's any digital handout. Okay, Zukipi.
Zukifi.
He's been here actually all through, and he has been typing how proud he is of you. So,
what awesome!
Zukipi, your hand is up, and the floor is yours. So you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Let me start by joining others in commending the presenter. He has done quite a wonderful job, because you see, I was moved by his honesty. Not everybody wants to talk about the path that he had to thread to arrive at such a success story. But then I should say that we are all schools. I'm sure we're not exactly at the point when we started this discussion, and I'm so happy about that. And I could relate to all that my friend Falayi had been saying, because actually I'm serving a third term as a HOD, a head of department in my institution. So a lot of the things that he has been talking about, the diagnosis and whatever, I think it comes true. But I was going to ask him, you see, he happened to be, if not the youngest, he was one of the youngest in our school who started out in 1985. And by the time we were about graduating, he happened to be the junior NCO. So I was wondering if he sees that as a kind of a launch pad. Well, I was going to ask, how has that prepared you for leadership? Because if I relate to what our former commandant, Augusta Farah, was saying, the leadership, the training we received was all about leadership. It prepared us for what's because we are going to be unleashed into the world, and this is what we're seeing, the confidence that exists in us. And wherever you go, you see that there's something that marks you out from the rest of the group. And my pro was at a point was wondering, what is it about this guy? And they told me, oh, he went to military school. I said, oh, I see. That's the difference. So I thought it comes with first the motto, like he said. The moment you come to school, you are told, start to excel, you start wondering, what are these guys saying? And we've striven to excel, and we are still excelling. We are still flying the flag wherever we are. And so, back to my question, I really want him to relate his journey, because he couldn't have found the confidence to face the realities on the ground from the air. Maybe it has been imbibed in him all along. It has been inspired into him, probably because he went he had the formative training that he had in Air Force Military School, JOS. So I thought I should ask this question: how has that helped you in facing the reality of this you have to face and arriving at such a success story? Thank you.
All right. Did you get the question? First of all, I am still amazed by the fact that this is the first time I see Zukipi, that we used to call it. This is the first time I see Zukipi since 1987. How many years is that? 33? 33 years, right?
33 years.
Yeah, 33 years. So I'm still kind of in shock, right? You're my friend on Facebook, but you made sure you have no photos on Facebook. So this is my first time seeing you. All right, let's allow Tokunbo answer that. Then after that, okay, I see your hand up. So Zukipi, while he's answering your question, you can put your digital hand down. TK, yours.
Okay, Zach, my brother, I appreciate that. So, let me even just start by saying that I truly, truly appreciate. Zach is calling in from Nigeria. So this is midnight. In fact, let me see. This is almost 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. So I can't thank you enough, Zach, for the sacrifice. And I know there are a couple others, a couple of other of my 85 brothers that decided to join the house. Colonel Ogwagwo is there. Look, that's, yep, Chubweze. Thomas, I see you there. So I want to just give a heads up and a salute to all the brothers, particularly those that joined from Nigeria. I truly appreciate it. So Zach is a professor in university in Nigeria, for those who do not know. So he's an erudite scholar, and maybe we will release him one of these days to even come and share with us, Presido. But I think getting to the question about if my experience as junior NCO helped me in becoming a leader and becoming a better leader. And I want to say yes. I actually feel like AFMS birthed something in us. I would say maybe as a junior NCO, it probably came afterwards, came a lot more naturally, right? because I'd had experience standing out in front of people. I'd had the experience of taking responsibility. I had the experience of having to, back in those days as a journalist, so you make people do what you needed to do. You weren't doing any of this relational thing. It's an order, you go get it done. So it was a slightly different, but still, with my mates, we had to talk to get things through. So I think there were definitely some deposits because I'd had more experience along the ways. But I will say that one thing that AFMS kind of did generally is that the motto that I shared at the end, the striving to excel, I think it bears true. There was just something that AFMS put in you that made you feel different, made you feel special. And sometimes those are attributes that make you feel comfortable standing out, or just make you even feel comfortable knowing that you can have a seat at the table. And when you have that air of I belong, you have that air of I was one of the few that got into AFMS, then you begin to feel like, I'm 1 out of 1,000, or I'm 1 out of 1,000,000 people. So there's something in me that I can take things on. So I'll say, yes, the answer to the question was the experience I had at Junior NCO definitely was seeds that I was able to pull from. But I also had to study and continue to study and continue to take, expose myself to become a better leader and to just get as much into me that I can imagine. One of the things that I didn't get to say during the discussion is a leader has to read. You have to have exposure. And there was no way around it. And so one of the things that I had to do was I had to figure ways to be able to expose myself to more things. I have books, some of them I've read, some of them I'm still getting to read them. I have things on my phone. I have Audible, I have audio. I have ways that I need to just keep feeding information. So I'll keep it short because I know there are other questions, but hopefully that answered the question, Zach. I believe that, yeah, if you had leadership experiences, it helps in AFMS, but I feel like all of us have leadership, on the inside of us, and we can tap into it and truly become the leaders that we can aspire to be.
Thank you very much. Okay, GK, floor is yours now.
Hey, hi, good evening, everyone. And for those from Nigeria, good morning to you guys there. First of all, I'm preparing myself not to talk too much because that's the big sickness I have. I talk too much. So I'm prepping myself here not to talk too much. I must admit, two things made me come onto this call. I saw the advert. I was biased because we belong to the same summer fitness group. So I already said to myself, I must patronize this guy and join. Then, again, I'm busy with basketball, volleyball here and there. In fact, I'm waiting at a basketball arena for my son to finish. And then Oga K, sent me a ping, where are you? I said, I did drive now. I go join when I go join. And then I had to join. The second bias is because, in quotes, I love your brother, Dr. Flo. He's been some kind of motivational person for me. And so on the second hand, I said, this guy, maybe he won't be like Flo. Make I try log in. Make I see whether he go be like him. TK, you have blown me away. I'm really very impressed. Nothing to add to the pips on your shoulder. I have learned quite a lot. And the more I wanted to ask, the more questions I had penned down to ask, the more you spoke, the more you answered them. And so a lot of things have struck off here. There's no need. He's spoken about it. Then I'm writing one. You have addressed it. But there's one thing I like everyone to take from here, and that is in the simplicity of presentations. When I logged in and I heard you say simplicity in presentations, you just took me back to to remind me of my father who's been late for 20 years. And while I was in FMS, one thing I thought I lacked was the big grammar. A lot of people could speak the shons and the zims I was like, geez, when am I going to learn this? But my father kept telling me, English is in the is and the was. And I was like, I'm trying to speak something big, but my father kept telling me, keep it simple, leave it with the is and the was. And I'll try to summarize this during one of his visits to see me in Form 2. Throughout Form 1, I cried so much. So Form 2, he came to see me. And he said to me, so how do you find Jos now and your presence in Jos? What have you learned? And I can't remember how I started the answer, but somewhere along the line, I used the word territorial integrity. Asked me in Form 2 what I knew about territorial integrity, but I just wanted to say something to impress my father. And then he halted me there. He said, what do you mean your presence in your territorial integrity? I had no answer, but my father said, keep it simple. I'm not impressed. My father used to be a writer with Guardian and all whatnot, and my father had no big English. So I was really impressed when I heard you say, keep things simple. And that has been my mantra all my life. I don't want to know the big words. I just keep my things is and was. And I tell you, I'm not there yet, but when I talk or when I do things, I don't like the big English. I think you confuse people, especially when they want to find the meaning to what you just said while you've kept on speaking, so they lose part of it. And while listening to you again, I found out that most things were really very, very simple. So TK, I have no regrets. I've been running my car. It's cold outside. I have no regrets joining you. You were really very on point there. Leadership is key to me, but I'm driving it home now because I've been hard on myself on a few things and I lost track somewhere. But with Oga K and a lot of other people, I'm retracing certain things, and I found out that as men, as fathers, as husbands, as people in our different fields of work, leadership is really very, very key. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, I can't thank you enough for those compliments, sir. I salute you. And just to let you know, you're one of the few leaders on that our summer group, our fitness group, that makes it go. And you encourage us to stay fit. And I salute you for that. And I just take all your compliments to heart. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Anybody? This one way, my Oga, they call me Oga. You know, in those days, when you're calling Oga, you're there for trouble. So if my Oga is coming to call me Oga K, my heart they shake every time he call me Oga K. My heart goes shaking.
You are president, you are president. Always remember you are president. The president is the leader.
Okay, you not introduce your AFMS number. You know, you should have started with that. Make people get out for perspective. Mm-hmm.
There is no need for that.
Okay.
I'm ex-jam Ejike Agbatekwe.
He's 81 set because you don't say some people go do that. Hey, they never bought me that time. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Who else has a question? Now is the time to ask, actually. It's not every day that you get a CFO available like this, where you would ask a question. Ask now, or forever imagine that you would have become a CFO. Anybody with a question before I ask mine? Anybody? Okay. All right. So while you're still thinking, and I don't see any hands raised, I wanted to ask, so while you were talking, right, I was feeling, you know, like, oh my goodness, am I doing my calling? You know, because I've always felt my calling is, I feel that I can communicate anything complex. I can break it down for people to understand. That's what I feel. That's what I think. So I have done very well teaching anything. So if I understand food, I can teach it. If I understand technology, I can teach it. You know, that's where I think my calling is. I've also used it at work. But when you are teaching at work, when you're a leader, which is where I think I fall, I spend more time in putting forward the person I am trying to help grow, that I fall back to the background. But here's the problem I've realized in my career. A lot of times you get to report to managers, not necessarily leaders. And so when they start to see the person who you are leading shine, at a point in time, they start to think you're not doing anything. The question is, am I supposed to now take that extra effort to go and, like you just the way you feel uncomfortable, basically saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, rather than doing the thing itself. So as I see my fulfillment comes when I see the people I'm leading grow into respectable professionals. But sometimes I realize it seems to cost me because I don't go to the person who I report to. And a lot of times, actually, it's not the person who you report to that actually evaluates you. It's all those other people that they go for smoke breaks together, or that they have those meetings after meetings together that actually evaluate you to your boss, right? So that when you come to the office, you discover a meeting occurred without you there, but you don't know when it occurred because it wasn't on your schedule. So what do you do in those kind of scenarios? 1. 2 is, as I was hearing you, I'm now thinking, I've seen an image before where a goat was going to fight a bull. So the caption there was, only God know which motivational speaker tell this goat where he go face, where he go face bull. So I'm wondering whether this thing that you have now motivated me, that I'm thinking, you know what, I'm a teacher, I should get out now. You know, say my 50th birthday is in less than 2 weeks. So if at 50, they come motivate me, I come do like goat, we go face bull, you know. What do you have to say about that? Those are the 2 questions.
Okay, I take that second one first.
All right.
Because that first one had small. No, I'm just kidding. You know, at some point, I always say that we get to some point where so one of the slides that I had, I said, you have to ask the big questions now. There was this writer that said, one of the richest, most resourceful places in the world is the grave. Because you had millionaires that never made the attempt to become an entrepreneur. You had billionaires who never took the step that could take them ultimately to attain the billions. You had orators who couldn't face the fear of starting. And you have actors, and you have musicians, and you have the best talents in the world, the best potential, but those potential and that talent never got fulfilled, never got realized, because they kept waiting. They kept waiting. As we grow in life, one of the things that I think for me has helped me make some pivots is that I said, I want to die empty. Dying empty means everything that I have inside, all the dreams that I have, I want to give them expression. Now, they may have to come in stages, they may have to come in phases, but I want to be intentional about making sure that I fully express them. And I go back to this thing that Jeff Bezos said. He said, it's almost like your passions have chosen you. So there are things inside you that you really didn't have a hand in. It was a gift. The question is, what are you going to do with those gifts? And until you begin to unwrap them, you never fully realize. When I left Nigeria to come to the US, I never thought I'd be a CFO. All I just thought was, I want to just keep doing the best that I could, but I kept attacking the challenges in front of me with the best intention that I had. I remember one of my, because I worked in Arthur Andersen before I came. I remember one of the leaders and partners said, oh boy, you have potential now. Why you won't go this place? Stay here. And I'm not saying that people can't be successful, but it was just the desire that I had, that I said, there was something in me that wants to explore beyond the shores of Nigeria, and the opportunity presented itself, and I was going to take it. And I was going to burn the bridges because I needed to be Flint focused. Otherwise, I'd keep dilly-dallying. That was my decision. That was the call I made. But kind of back to the point, Oga, is that the big decisions is you want to die empty. You have gifts on the inside of you that have to be expressed if you truly want to be a fulfilled. And I believe all of us are on a journey of wanting to fulfill our potential. Different things, we don't know the fullness of them, but many times they keep flashing like this, like amber light. And they don't come in a full package. So until you take the first step, maybe you won't stumble and fall, and then you get up again, and then you take the next step. But if we don't start on the path, we never fully actualize them. So getting to the second question, I think it's always an interesting dynamic. I'll say one other thing. The law of awareness, it talks about purpose, passion, and opportunities. So one of the things that I'll say will be interesting to look out for is when and how can there be opportunities for you to be able to be in position where you can either make presentations or you can take on an assignment that will create an opportunity for you to be able to either present the results of that assignment to somebody other than your boss. So in my company, I have a situation where I tell some of my team, I want to have cross-functional reviews and cross-functional transfer of skills. So maybe somebody here is involved in investments. Okay, and I say, okay, this other person is in accounts payable. If somebody says, look, I'm interested in learning more about the finance function, even though it's not my job, I'll say, okay, we'll create an opportunity for you to spend 4 hours or maybe half a day or a full day to shadow. All right. So those also could be opportunities where you're beginning to get exposure. Your supervisors, other people are now exposing you to, maybe you're getting exposed to other departments or other people where your abilities and capabilities can now start becoming evident. So all I'll say is, again, that point is maybe being just a little bit sensitive to opportunities when they come. They say sometimes opportunities don't come packaged with roses, right? So they may come packaged with hustle and work. But what that could lead to is that it will put you in front and it will give you exposure. I'll give one last example. So I had this, one of the jobs that I had where I was offered, I talked about one of the early jobs I had where I was offered the job to become, was an accounts payable clerk. And before I could actually take that job, I was offered the job to now become an accountant. But what happened in that job that got me the accounting job was that there was this task that was given. So I have an accounting background, but I know a little bit about accounting systems implementation. Unbeknownst to me, the company was in the middle of shifting from one accounting system to another. So even though I was working on a different assignment, they began to give me some tasks and they now discover that, oh, this guy is a bit small on systems. So, okay, maybe he understands how accounting systems work beyond just debits and credits and accounting. And a consultant that I did not know was paying attention, was observing. When they offered me the second job that had to do with being an accountant and also had to do with helping to implement this accounting system, that's when I now found out that they were actually observing me and saying that I had more skills, I had more capabilities because they were bringing these difficult things my way. So all that to basically say that I think there will always be, and it differs for different organizations, but there might be just little opportunities where you can take on some tasks that will begin to give you exposure. one other thing that I do, and this is why leadership is important. With some of my teams, even people that don't report directly to me, sometimes I have them bring their direct reports to certain meetings, because I tell them, I want to hear these guys make the presentation or talk, because I just want to know what they're made up of, and I want to know what kind of skills and capabilities they have. So even though I'm not taking away the accountability and responsibility from the direct report, I want to hear what those guys do. So leadership makes a world of difference. And okay, what you're doing, I want to say that when you do well for other people, you will do good ultimately, and that it will come back to you in circles. And last thing I'll say, it could also be that maybe you look for a different opportunity in a different place. You know, I moved to different jobs sometimes to be able to move around, and then it came back where I was able to elevate. So I'll stop there, and hopefully I addressed the question, Ogake.
Because of this talk, I go resign for December. Okay. All right, so I have two questions here, and I want to ask both of them together just so that you can, take them, because, I think the questions are now coming in, and then now the time is. All right, so first one, I will just read both of them. First one from Adeshobo Ijo again. He says, I read books, but can forget to apply the useful information on a daily basis. How do you intentionally remind yourself to use these useful information regularly? Then let me also read the second one so that you have both of them, so that you can take them at the same time. The other one is from Jide Dada. He says, how do you deal with workplace politics without letting it affect your growth, especially if your line managers are the key players of the politics?
Oh, that's tough. Okay, let's take the read books from Ade. You make a great point. I think sometimes what I've learned to do, or what I've come to terms with, is not to punish myself about remembering everything about books. And I say, if I read a book and I can come out with 3 or 4, maybe 5 nuggets, I'm good. If I can come out with more, then awesome. That means that's a really great book. But even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 things, those things can serve as a pivot that I've learned, can make a world of difference. So the first thing I'll say is, don't, beat yourself up too hard. But this is the second thing that I've really begun to do. And I'm not I'm not an expert. I'm a work in progress on this too. So both of us we're both learning, is developing a system where I either highlight or make notes of certain things that jump out at me when I'm reading a book, and then figuring a way to be able to clip those nuggets into maybe a memo or onto just a, sometimes it can be a memo on my phone, on my iPad, or I kind of just write them and type that down into like a Word document. And then that way I can easily go back and say, look, it's a 300-400 page book, or maybe 200 page book. There was a page or 2 of nuggets that stood out. I can go retrieve them from my phone or from my laptop or wherever I save them, or create a file for them. So that's a work in progress for me, but that's a model and a methodology that I think can help. So a little bit of work, again, it doesn't come easy, right? But just a little bit of work to try to memorialize the things that really hit you strong when you're reading those books. And the other thing I say sometimes about books is, I'll say, look, don't also sweat it with saying I must finish every book I pick up. There are times that you pick up a book and maybe it served you well for the week or 2 that you were able to pick it up. And maybe that's the information you needed. Take it, use that info. Now, if you can come back to it and finish the book, great. But look, if you find 1 or 2 things, they will help. Take it and use it, versus, boy, I didn't have the time to finish going through the book and I feel dissatisfied. I don't feel fulfilled. And then it becomes now more of the goal becoming more of finishing the book versus taking the nuggets from the book and being able to apply them. So these are things that I had to walk myself over, because, sometimes if you're busy, there's only so much you can do. The last thing I also do sometimes to books is when I'm driving, you drive to work, or, you drive to one soccer game, or you drive to this one, audibles help. They're not exactly the same way as reading a book, but you know what? It goes a long way. So I'll take whatever does not get done. So hopefully that helps. Number two, the second question about workplace politics. I'll say politics happen. I've been a victim of, office politics, and you just have to decide what works for you. What's your ethical compass? Because there are just certain things that you're just not going to, it's not worth it for me. So there were some politics that I had to say, look, I'm just going to stay away from this. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm not going to get into, the black and white thing. These are all black. They don't like black people, or they don't this and that. I'm not saying that does not happen sometimes, but it colored my perspective for a long time in a particular position I was, where I thought I was being held back because of the black and white issue. While that may be a little bit, maybe a tiny little bit somewhere, but it was more about the fact that I wasn't ready. So before I became CFO, I acted as interim for about maybe 12 to 18 months on two different occasions. The first occasion was when the first CFO left, who I was reporting to at the time. I was asked to act as the interim, and went through this extensive, hired recruiter, blah, 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 went through this extensive process, and I didn't get the job. And one of my first reaction was, they're not like black person. I'm just being honest, because these are things we deal with. So hopefully I'm not shocking you all. One of my first reaction was, they don't like a black person, because I was going to be the only black person in the leadership team and the leadership group. And I thought, oh, they can't deal with a black person, or they can't deal with an immigrant because I get accents. And so they brought somebody else in to become the CFO at the time. That person spent about 9 months. But one of the things that happened when I was interim, and for the times that I was interim, was that was the opportunity for me to really polish my public speaking. And because I was interim, I kind of felt like I had nothing to lose. So I was maxing out on the opportunity to learn, to improve my public speaking, to polish that up, to be able to interact in and engage in the middle of, and deal with billionaires, right? Deal with billionaires, deal with leaders of industry in board meetings, and not feel intimidated, and feel like I could engage at that level. And so when I was interim, this was my second interim, it became clear to me that I needed to skill up in that area. So when I wasn't selected at the first time, I sat back and said, there were certain skills I didn't have. So this was not a black or white thing. This was not an immigrant thing, but I had some gaps that I needed to fill. And so I worked on those gaps, I filled those gaps. And then when the second wave came around, the person that they hired above me spent less than a year and couldn't get along with the CEO. And then it became, we're actually not hiring out anymore. We have the right person on board, but then I had skilled up in my public speaking and engaging at the board executive level over that 12-month period, that it became evident that I could do the job. So what was I kind of coming back again to the question about how do you deal with work with politics? People will do what they got to do, but certain people will do what certain people want to do. And I think for me was, one, I had to disabuse my mind of biases that were incorrect. Again, could be subliminal, but they weren't the critical factor. So I think, for the person that asked the question, I'll say, you keep your ethical compass and your moral compass. Don't engage in that business. And I think continue to be the best person you could be. And, just try to be the better leader and the better person, but also try to build relationships, right? Because the fact that, okay, I'm not engaging in that below the belt approach, then you might need to build relationships so that people know you, people see you, people understand the value you bring to the table. So that if somebody says, Jide or TK did this, someone else can say, I know this guy. I don't know. I don't think so. This is not the kind of character that this person exhibits. So that's where relational and equity, comes into play. And I forgot to say this even with Ogake's question. There's a phenomenon called 360-degree leadership. And that leadership phenomenon basically says that you lead up, so you have a boss, but you lead up. So how do you engage your boss in a way where you can have the most dynamic and optimal relationship? And you lead down, so the people that report to you, that are subordinates, that you don't take them for granted and that you just don't use them, and then the third level of leadership is with your peers, people where you don't have any authority over, they don't have authority over you, but engaging with them in a way where you guys can be effective. So I feel like if you employ that concept of just saying, okay, how can I build relationships? How can I be effective across board? I think it will begin to speak for you and can blunt, potentially the impact of workplace politics.
All right, so one last question, and TK, if it is possible for you to answer this in 2 minutes.
I'll do it in one.
Yeah, just so that we can, end it, so that it will be like 2.5 hours, although people know log in time, but all right, for those who log in time. He says, this is from Ayo Adams. He says, what will you say has been the biggest tip for your transition from mid-level management to C-level leadership? And how have you managed the informal relationships in the transition to be strategic, but not patronizing?
Oh boy, it's a work in progress. I'll tell you what, sometimes in leadership, there's probably a little bit of patronizing that comes along with it. It doesn't cross an ethical border, but I always go to it with this perspective. There are certain things with my CEO that it's not worth the battle and it's not worth the fight. So I go along with it. So that might be patronizing in a way. But then there are other things where I say, okay, this one cross line. We get to work this out. So you have to pick your battles. Number two is that when you're an executive, it's a lot about relationships. I once heard a CEO say that when I go into any new role, I always bring my team along with me. And I never understood that because I used to think that was too biased, but I now understood that when you build certain relationships, there's a certain level of productivity that comes along with that it's taken maybe 5, 10, 20 years to build that kind of relationship, that it's probably not just worth having to rebuild that over, because you have a short amount of time to get to your results. So I'll say relationships are key. Sometimes you have to go along. You just have to figure out how to fight your battles and when to pick your battles, because you can't fight all the battles. And some things are okay. It just may not be what your preference is. So I'll keep it to that, to keep to that 1 minute or 1.5 minutes that Ogake gave me. So hopefully that answered some of the question. Happy to go offline and help with, and answer more for anyone, actually. I'll put that out there offline.
All right, so if you want to reach him, you can reach him, of course, through the WhatsApp. If you're in the summer fitness group, don't bring problems there. We just want to see how many steps you work out for the day, that's all. So any other last comments? All right, let me make the final comment. First of all, on behalf of all the ex-JAM in North America, we want to say a very big thank you for all the work that you put in to prepare for this meeting. It shows that you prepared, and now it makes more sense that you gave so much a time in the future, because it takes a lot to be able to communicate with a few slides the amount of information you communicated in its simplest form. So thank you very much for that. We really, really appreciate what you've done. And not just that, we also appreciate the fact that you are the one that basically said, you know what, I need to contribute to building the value of our brand. And so that takes me to something. I say this with individual meetings, but every ex-JAM, especially in North America, and actually all over, not just North America, but especially in North America, you have something of immense value that basically when you present it or when you use it to serve, makes our brand a very respectable brand and a very valuable brand, right? So we're not asking you to devote all your time to becoming an executive. Those ones are like, they're like blessed, they are saints. But then when Oga Ejike took over running elections, right, we set a new standard worldwide. Okay, TK, that you see, I'm the only one who knew what he was capable of, right? People just thought, oh, he played tennis, and then every now and then, for those who don't know, he also is the one who inspects our accounts. So we have a CFO who is balancing like a couple of billions of dollars, who basically is running after our $4,000 to make sure it's properly accounted for. Then we have another CFO who makes decisions over a couple of hundreds of millions of dollars, who is the one who is serving as the auditor, inspect the accounts and give advice, right? Just so that you understand the value that we have within. The question is, how many other people have these specialized skills that will elevate the brand and you do nothing about it? So we're not asking for everything, we're just asking for a little bit, because that little bit that you contribute will elevate the whole brand. And so if you have done something in the past, it's time for you to schedule something, maybe quarterly. Just quarterly will be 4 times a year that you do something. Or maybe it's yearly, or maybe it's, but you need to basically say you're going to give a chunk of your time to elevating the brand. And in the process, you bring your A game. And for what we have seen, everybody's A game elevates the brand. That's all I have to say to today. So we're, basically, we just keep setting higher and higher. And now, I don't know if you go through the comments, you see someone like Dr. Kingsley, who we call our Dr. Fauci. First of all, used to go on politics, only for us to find out that the Fauci you see in the US, him and Kingsley are on the same level when it comes to knowledge of epidemiology, right? I'm just bringing that, and I'm just highlighting that. So please, we need a book club, right? We need somebody to take that on the side, create something like the summer fitness that Oga Ejike has caused some people's lives to be prolonged just by creating that group and by making everybody accountable and everybody always talking about fitness. Some people's lives are prolonged. Only God knows who would have dropped, from lack of exercise, but now is basically improving. So I don't want to go on that whole long talk, but I want to say that if you have gained something, give something. And not just cash, actually, more than cash is for you to give your time. Pick up something, elevate it. That's all. So thank you very much for coming. For all those who came, thank you very much for, especially those in Nigeria. That just shows you guys love TK so much, because it looks like not only telling classmates.
I salute them.
They all logged on, right? And so we'll see you for the next one. So now I will leave the line open. So if everybody, this is when the thing don't finish. Anybody who wants shake hand, we want greet, everybody can talk at the same time. Log off when you're done. So unmute yourselves and, let there be free flow of conversation. Thank you very much. You can unmute yourself.